and we need to be addressing...
Is it? Because we've had a lot of attitudinal change on many social issues since 1978, which goes against that particular time. So can you compare like with like?
Well, I think that what we can look at is the fact that there has consistently been a hostile environment to migrants. If you look at government policy from the 1960s, there was a concerted effort to keep migrants of colour out of this country. So what I'm saying is not that we should be ignoring people's concerns, what are often deemed legitimate concerns.
Hello guys, welcome to my YouTube channel, the TV Reality Show. Yesterday we'll be checking on Douglas Murray, schools UK hating globalist with brief history lesson. Yes, without wasting much time, let's go.
So what's so different about people from Eritrea, Myanmar and...
My God,
please
you
tell me
can't have gone anywhere.
Specifically.
You can't have gone anywhere. If you honestly have to answer that question. It is a simple statement
of
the obvious that countries and cultures have differences.
What
it doesn't mean that...
Specifically, what are the cultural specificities?
I'll give you the history lesson.
You are about to witness Douglas Murray completely educate an ignorant globalist on the basics of immigration and globalization. Douglas Murray uses logic and facts to dismantle her points and lay down an important argument we all need to listen to. Douglas Murray did not hold back.
I think the whole immigration debate needs to be put in the broader context in which migrants have been consistently scapegoated. So we've seen migrants blamed for low pay, we've seen them blamed for crumbling public services, and what's actually going on, all the evidence shows from the LSE to the OECD that migrants aren't a significant factor in low pay, and that it's underinvestment in our public services that's leading to them to collapse. So I think that there are a number of things going on with people's cultural anxiety. I think that is a real thing. I'm not denying that it is, and we need to look at the other factors alongside immigration. But just to talk about immigration first, I think that the whole immigration debate, it needs to be recognised. Zubaida Haq from the Runnymede Trust has talked about this, that anti-immigration sentiment is not always correlating with the numbers of immigrants in the country. So if you go back to 1978, you will see that when there was net migration was 0, you will see that 70% of people in Britain said that they felt that their culture was being swamped by migrants. So what that tells us is that we need to be recognising that anti-immigration sentiment is very deeply entrenched in this country, and we need to be addressing...
Is it? Because we've had a lot of attitudinal change on many social issues since 1978, which goes against that particular time. So can you compare like with like?
Well, I think that what we can look at is the fact that there has consistently been a hostile environment to migrants. If you look at government policy from the 1960s, there was a concerted effort to keep migrants of colour out of this country. So what I'm saying is not that we should be ignoring people's concerns, what are often deemed legitimate concerns by politicians, but we should be recognising that instead of just calling people racist, we should be addressing why there is prejudice. That's not to say that everyone who's anti-immigration is racist, but it is to recognise that there is an element of racism and an element of prejudice within the anti-migrant feeling, and I think we need to be addressing that, trying to break down difference as opposed to reinforcing those differences, because people all over the world have far more in common than a lot of this discourse would have us believe.
You've written about the challenges, the cultural challenges. What would you say to Maya, what you've heard from Maya?
I entirely disagree. I think you would be hard-pushed to find a single country in the world that has been as tolerant and as welcoming of migration as this one. In fact, I cannot think of one anywhere in the world. I've travelled widely, not just on our continent, but across the world, and I can assure you that if the numbers that came into this country over the post-war period up to now had gone into any other country in the world, we would be seeing a very different response. And I think this is a knee-jerk assault on the British people, which is continuing and should stop. We were talking earlier about some of the economic implications. The economic implications of globalisation include the possibility that people born in this country, at the same time as somebody in this country has a child, they are competing with dozens of other children around the world to get to the lifestyle benefits that people across the world would dream of and which people in this country think is their birthright. And that's changing. And that's going to change across all sorts of parts of the developed world. And one of the things that makes that change far, far more painful is the idea that it will happen simultaneously with an assault on their identity. Because people can potentially take the stagnation of wages, they can potentially take the living standards questions, but if at the same time you say, oh, and by the way, maybe we don't always say you're racist, but we sort of imply it, then I think you're going to build up a lot of problems for the future. And by the way, very quickly on your 1970s point, one of the things about migration is it takes a long time for that effect to happen. If you look at the opinion polls on migration in this country that followed the influx after the Blair government, it took time for people's attitudes to, as it were, harden on migration, precisely because the impact of that migration takes the time to happen. So as well as it were, misrepresenting the facts, I think you just have to be extremely careful not to say, this country, which is, as I say, the most tolerant country in the world, is in fact the most bigoted, because if you travel anywhere around the world, you will see a very different picture.
Douglas Murray strongly critiques the portrayal of British society as inherently anti-immigrant, pointing out the UK's long history of tolerance and integration compared to global standards. He challenges the narrative that anti-immigration sentiment is purely driven by prejudice, suggesting that it often stems from legitimate concerns about rapid change and integration challenges. It's crucial to examine the broader social dynamics at play when discussing immigration in the UK. Research shows that public concerns about immigration often correlate more strongly with rapid changes in local demographics than with overall numbers. For example, a study conducted by the Migration Policy Institute notes that sudden demographic shifts can lead to a sense of unease among native populations, as they may perceive their cultural norms and economic stability as being threatened. This unease is less about the origins of the new residents and more about the pace and scale of change, which can be disorienting and create a perception of loss of community identity. Statistics from the British Social Attitudes Survey indicate that concerns over immigration are often linked with anxiety about integration and the perceived impact on public services and job markets, rather than outright xenophobia. For instance, data from the survey shows that a significant portion of the population is supportive of immigrants who are seen as economically beneficial or who integrate into the cultural fabric of the society, suggesting that resistance to immigration may often stem from economic concerns and issues of social cohesion rather than racial prejudice. Moreover, voices like sociologist Eric Kaufman have argued that fears about the demographic changes impacting national identity should be openly discussed rather than dismissed as xenophobic. Kaufman suggests that acknowledging and addressing these fears can lead to healthier and more constructive public discourse, reducing polarization and helping to craft policies that promote both integration and respect for the cultural continuity of the host society.
Well, quite frankly, I don't agree with this idea that we're bringing the rest of the world where we're leading. If you look at the history
Are
of the
we leading?
No, if you look at the history of the British Empire, what you'll see is actually a very bloody history.
Now.
But now, I mean, I think that it's...
In terms of LGBT, in terms of women...
I think that racial attitudes, actually, if you look at the British Social Attitudes Survey, there is increasing people who say that they are intolerant and do not like people of different races. So that is actually increasing. So I think there's a problem.
There's been an upward blip in a long downward trend. An upward blip because the change has been so radical and rapid.
Well, we can't ignore that. And to come back to Douglas's point originally, which I think we need to probe more, is this idea that...
Probe away.
Is that this idea that British society, he listed the monarchy, he listed Parliament, that is somehow under threat from people from Eritrea, Ghana and Myanmar. That's not clear to me how that's the case. You've listed all these institutions, but you haven't really explained exactly what it is that is under threat from these people.
I could answer from Douglas, because he has to answer that, because he's had a direct... He's had a direct challenge there, and then Sam, I'm going to come to you, and Linda, I'm going to go Linda first, then Sam, but Douglas, answer that direct challenge from Maya.
You can do it on all sorts of things. You can do it on historical attitudes, or you can do it on, for instance, current social attitudes, which is, I'll throw out as one example. And take an example that Nikki just cited of tolerance. I think we agree in Britain that we're a tolerant country, we're meant to be a tolerant country, we try to be a tolerant country, and so on. There's been polling in recent years that actually shows that the more immigration you have, the less tolerance you have on certain issues, not because we, the British people, have become intolerant, but because people come with views of their own. Let me give you a very quick example. A poll carried out 2 years ago by YouGov asked people their opinions on homosexuality, morally acceptable or morally not acceptable. Across the country as a whole, about 14% of the British people said homosexuality not morally acceptable. In London, it was double that. Why would that be? Is it because London, the capital city, is just a particular home of homophobia? Or might it be, as I would suggest it is, because people come into the country with attitudes of their own? And you may deprecate that, and I deprecate that, but we should at least acknowledge it, and you're trying to cover it.
Douglas Murray points out the cultural disorientation that often accompanies the globalization of people. He argues that rapid demographic changes can unsettle communities, challenging their cultural norms and identities. This concern isn't unique to any one nation, but is a global phenomenon where traditional ways of life feel threatened by a fast-paced global integration. To illustrate, studies from the Pew Research Center show that in many Western countries, there is a significant portion of the population that feels national culture is being lost to global influences. For example, 62% of Americans believe their way of life needs to be protected against foreign influence, reflecting a broader global trend. Other thinkers and commentators have echoed Murray's concerns about the impacts of rapid demographic change. For example, David Coleman, professor of demography at Oxford University, has extensively studied the implications of immigration on national demographics. Coleman points out that without integration strategies, rapid changes in the population can lead to segments of society feeling alienated, which can hinder the development of a shared national identity and increase divisions within society.
All right, welcome back, guys. Welcome back, guys. One thing I love about Douglas is he is so intelligent, and you, as an ordinary person, trying to play with intelligent of an intelligent man, I think that is a waste of intelligence. Seriously, I love this man. The way he puts words, the way like whatever, like you can't argue with him on anything. Yes, I believe she has learned her lesson. She's learned. Maybe she come for a debate. Now she has learned her lesson. Yes, guys, I want to know if you love the question and answer and you love Douglas Murray, how he pick his words a little by little. So I want to know how you feel on the comment section, and don't forget to subscribe for my YouTube channel for more videos like this. See you next time. Bye.